please open the commission.
The Royal Commission is now in session. Please be seated.
Commissioners, the fourth case study in this hearing concerns Bupa Aged Care Australia facility located here in Sydney in the suburb of Willoughby. Before I start with my opening, I understand there's some parties that wish to announce their appearance.
May it please you, Commissioners, my name is Needham. I appear with Ms Bunkle for the Bupa Australia Healthcare Holdings Proprietary Limited, Bupa Aged Care Australia Proprietary Limited, and Maureen Mary Berry, instructed by Herbert Smith Freehills.
Thank you, Ms Needham. Yes, Ms Hutchins.
Operator, please bring up the Bupa Tender Bundle Index. Commissioners, I tender the Bupa Willoughby Case Study Tender Bundle.
Yes. The Bupa Willoughby Case Study Tender Bundle will be Exhibit 3-34.
Commissioners, the focus of this case study will be on the quality and safety of care provided to a lady who was resident of a Bupa facility before her death at 70 years of age. She will be referred to as DE during the course of this case study, and her picture will now be displayed. Mrs. DE was born on May 1947. She had two daughters who will be referred to as DI and DJ, who will both also give evidence today. DI is her younger daughter and the principal narrative witness we will call. DJ is the older daughter and was her mother's authorised representative under power of attorney. She will read a statement on certain aspects of the case. In 2016, Mrs. DE was 69 years old, living independently in her own home. By late 2016, her daughters noticed that Mrs. DE was experiencing some memory loss, forgetfulness, and a small amount of confusion. In February 2017, Mrs. DE suffered a fall at home and was found by one of her daughters on the bathroom floor. It is likely she had been there for 24 hours. Mrs. DE was taken by ambulance to Royal North Shore Hospital, where she stayed for several weeks. Tests in hospital suggest that Mrs. DE may have had a stroke or a seizure. Mrs. DE was a cancer survivor, having been diagnosed with lung cancer in 2002 and 2 brain tumours the following year. At the time, Mrs. DE had been through a period of radiotherapy in her brain and lungs. While she had been in remission since 2014, tests conducted in hospital during her stay in 2016 suggested that Mrs. DE's cognitive and physical condition was deteriorating as a consequence of her previous medical treatment. While Mrs. DE was in hospital, on the 3rd of March 2017, she was assessed by the Aged Care Assessment Team and approved for both residential respite home care and residential permanent home care packages. At this time, her daughters had been exploring whether it would be possible to have her mother stay in her home, or alternatively whether they could find a facility for Mrs. DE to stay on a respite basis. Mrs. DE returned home for a short time, but then on the 26th of May 2017, she had another fall. This time she suffered a bad fracture to her upper right arm. She was again taken to the Royal North Shore Hospital, where she stayed for a period of 41 days from the 26th of May until the 6th of July 2017. During this period in hospital, her physical and cognitive condition declined. By the time Mrs. DE left hospital, she had minimal ability to comprehend what was happening and her speech was extremely limited. Her mobility had also decreased significantly. She was essentially bed or chair bound, requiring full assistance with activities of daily life, including eating and drinking. Mrs. DE's daughters made arrangements for Mrs. DE to become a resident of Bupa on a respite basis. Mrs. DE was only in Bupa for one night, however. Within 36 hours of her admission, she was transferred back to the Royal North Shore Hospital. On this occasion, Mrs. DE stayed in the Royal North Shore Hospital for 11 days, before she was again transferred back to Bupa, this time on a permanent basis. Mrs. DE's daughter, D DJ, had further discussions with Bupa representatives around this time, as it was decided that her mother was needing full-time care. Operator, please bring up tab 62. Commissioners, this is an extra services resident and accommodation agreement which DJ entered into with Bupa as her mother's authorised representative. On page 2 of this document, Operator, please turn to page 2. Thank you. You can see that DA is indicated to hold her mother's power of attorney and that she is also the primary contact in relation to her mother. Also shown on this document under E, other contact, is that DI is identified as the other contact for her mother. Operator, please go to page 11 of this document. Commissioners, you will see under the heading Care and Services at subclause 2.1, the agreement provides that the care and services provided to DE will include the care and services specified in Annexure D and the quality of care principles. As you are aware, Commissioners, the quality of care principles are delegated legislative requirements that apply to all approved providers. Operator, please turn to Annexure D on page 29. You will see that this page sets out a range of services which Bupa agreed to provide to Mrs. DE. These include various matters, including those listed at point 2.1. Please go to the next page, Operator, which is personal assistance with activities of daily living. Operator, please zoom on that box. These activities are said to include matters such as bathing, continence management, eating, including actual feeding if necessary, communication, including addressing difficulties arising from impaired hearing, sight or speech, and checking hearing aid batteries and cleaning spectacles. Operator, if you can go to point 3.8 on page 31. You'll see another range of services offered by Bupa included nursing services, including those specified as initial assessment and care planning carried out by a nurse practitioner or registered nurse, and ongoing management and evaluation. The services include a long list of matters which are specified at subparagraphs A to M, including at A, establishment and supervision of complex pain management or palliative care program, including monitoring and managing any side effects, and at subparagraph H, special feeding and for care recipients with dysphagia. Mrs. DE was a resident of Bupa for a period of 4 weeks before her death on the evening of 15th of August 2017. The operator will now display a brief chronology of the various transfers between Mrs. D's home, the hospital and Bupa, which I have just mentioned. During her stay, Mrs. DE and her daughters relied on Bupa to provide care that met her mother's specific needs. Later this morning, Mr. Gray will take you to hospital and medical records showing that, in addition to her impaired cognition and immobility, Mrs. DE had a number of other relevant conditions that required consideration and proper care. The level of care provided by Bupa to Mrs. DE fell well below her daughter's expectations. In September 2017, following unsuccessful attempts to resolve their concerns with Bupa, Mrs. DE's daughter DI lodged a formal complaint regarding Bupa's conduct with the Australian Aged Care Complaints Commissioner. This complaint led to an investigation into the matter by the Complaints Commissioner and findings being made against Bupa in this regard. Mrs. DE's daughters will each give evidence today detailing the issues that they experienced with the care provided to their mother, including mismanagement of the palliative care process, including a lack of appropriate communication with them and inadequate or absent support from staff at Bupa Willoughby on the evening of Mrs DE's death. You will also hear evidence from Miss Maureen Berry, Executive Clinical Advisor at Bupa Aged Care Australia Proprietary Limited, and a statement from an additional Bupa witness, Dr Ross, will be tendered. The evidence as a whole suggests that the care of Mrs DE at Bupa Willoughby fell short of an acceptable standard with respect to her aspiration risk and swallowing difficulties, her risk of developing pressure injuries due to her immobility and timely detection of pressure injuries, her nutritional care, her access to personal aids which affected her quality of life and dignity, her pain management over an extended period, the lack of an end-of-life plan and inadequate palliation or comfort in some periods of the final days of her life. Commissioners, I now call the first witness, Miss D.I.
Do you wish to swear an oath from the Bible or make an affirmation?
Affirmation, please.
Repeat after me. I solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm
I solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
will be the truth,
will be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Operator, please display the witness statement of D.I. Good morning. Is the statement now on the screen the statement you have prepared for the Royal Commission?
Yes, it is.
And do you wish to make any amendments?
No, I don't.
Are the contents of the statement true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, they are.
Commissioners, I tender the witness statement of D.I., document WIT.0101.0001.001.001.
The witness statement of DI dated the 17th of April 2019 will be Exhibit 3-35.
In your witness statement, you detail your experience regarding your mother's time at Bupa Residential Aged Care Facility in 2017. I would like to ask you first about the events which led up to your mother's move into Bupa, starting first of all with what her condition was like around 2016.
2016, Mum had been living on her own, very happily, very mobile. Towards the end of that year, over the course of the 12 months, I think we started to see a very slow cognitive decline. In Mum, we put it down to old age and forgetfulness, nothing too concerning. We never had any concerns about her living on her own, going about her everyday business, catching public transport, things like that. She was very self-sufficient and she had the odd fall, but nothing of too much concern to my sister or I.
And how was her mobility at this stage?
It was fine. She would walk from her apartment down 20 minutes, 30 minutes down the road to the supermarket, come back with her shopping. She was very mobile. She would cook at home. She would catch buses on her own. She was very self-sufficient.
And in February 2017, your mother became a patient at Royal North Shore Hospital for several weeks. What led to her hospitalisation on that occasion?
My sister and I would both normally speak to Mum every day, if not every second day. Given she was living on her own, we always checked in with her. We tried to call her on several occasions during that day, and to no avail, we couldn't get in contact with her. It then got to about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, and there was still no answer, which became concerning because Mum didn't go out at night. She was very much a homebody. And so I rang my sister and said, look, I think maybe we need to go and check on Mum. My sister went over there in the evening and had a key to Mum's house and let herself in, and Mum was on the floor of the bathroom. She was not quite with it. She was covered in urine. She had obviously been there for quite a while. And straight away my sister called an ambulance, and an ambulance came, and their first impression was maybe mum had a stroke or some sort of seizure. They took her to Royal North Shore, and then mum's stay within the hospital commenced then.
And during that time in hospital, what was your mother's cognitive condition like?
Mum was okay. So I think after the initial fall, a couple of days into her stay at the hospital, they were doing tests. She was sort of saying to us, when can I go home? Why am I here? She had no recollection of what had happened, but she was eating. She would come and meet us at the lift when we came to visit her in hospital. We'd walk her downstairs and get some morning tea when we were there. So she was still very mobile and happy. She'd laugh with the nurses, and she was still very much her old self, but obviously they were testing to see what had caused this fall or this seizure or whatever it might have been.
And at this time, what was the plan in relation to your mother's care when she left from the hospital?
So we realised, my sister and I both had young babies at home, so we realised that obviously mum couldn't come and stay with us if she was to leave hospital. So we looked into respite care, and it very much was only for respite at that stage. We thought, my sister looked into what was available. We thought maybe for a month or so she could have some respite care, get better, and then return to her apartment to live on her own again.
And were you looking at residential aged care facilities at this time?
We were. So we spent a few days and we probably visited around 6 to 8 facilities, very much looking at it from a respite perspective, but obviously in the back of our minds we thought maybe further down the track this might be somewhere that mum might need in the future, but certainly not in the immediate future. It was very much for respite.
And was your mother able to accompany you to any of those facility visits?
She didn't, because she was very against aged care, even for respite. In fact, actually, she did attend one visit with my sister managed that process with the application and the assessment in hospital, but it was for high-level care and also a home care, not high-level care, it was a home care package 4 from memory, I think. And that's where we started looking at options for someone to come and help mum in her home.
And so when she was discharged from hospital in May 2017, where did she go then?
When she was discharged from hospital, she went back to her apartment in Mossman, yep.
And was she looking after herself at that